Hi, this is Mashnu, and here is position number 27 of the middle game training. And this time it's a classic game played in 1912. Grandmaster Richard Reti playing white here, and it's white to move in this position. So I would like to ask you to pause the video in a few moments and then take a look at the position. Think for about 5 to 10 minutes and see if you can find a way to play this position with white. Alright? Okay, I'll continue the explanation in a few moments, so this is the moment to pause the video. Okay, so let's see what happens here. We see a position with, well, quite some imbalances. First of all, the black king and the white king, they have castled on opposite sides. That's important. Another thing, this half-open g-file can be dangerous for white. On the other hand, white has this half-open f-file directed to this weak pawn on f6. But perhaps the main thing in this position is that black has the bishop's pair and white has two knights. Now this fact of the bishop's pair against two knights is actually the main thing in this position. What Reti played in this position is based on the concept that two bishops are strong when the center is open, and when we have a closed center, then it's quite difficult to find enough space for those bishops, and that's why Reti played here in this position the move d5, closing the center and diminishing especially the space for this bishop on d7. It cannot go any longer to e6. The knight on c6 is attacked, so this knight went to b8 and now continues the next move exactly with the same idea of diminishing the freedom of those two bishops. White plays here b2, b4, controlling the c5 square. So look at now at these two bishops there. They have almost nowhere to go. There's only one square where this bishop can go without being captured. So this is the strategy of playing against the bishop's pair, closing the center and preventing counterplay this way. But let's have a look at how the game continued, because the rest of the game is also very instructive. Here black played rook d to g8, so trying to use this half-open file to start an attack against the white king. And the next step for white in his plan, now that we have closed the center and we have diminished the freedom of these two bishops, the next step is to get the pieces to better places, and this knight from f3 is going in this direction. f5 is the outpost that needs to be used by white, so knight to h4 was played here. Rook to g4, attacking the knight goes to f5. So here, if black decides to trade his bishop for this knight, and that is what happened in the game, then what happens is that after bishop takes f5, rook takes f5, in fact this other knight is going to find its way to f5. So it doesn't matter that we traded this knight from f5, because there is another one. There will be a reloading of this weapon. Knight to d7 was played now. Black is trying to make his pieces more active. Now rook a to f1, increasing the pressure against f6, the weakest point. Rook h to g8. Black is threatening to take on g2, so white plays now g3, preventing any threat from there. And here black played queen to f8. And what white did now is really strategically beautiful. the plan of white is to trade his light square bishop for this knight. Why? Because the knight on d7 is the main defender of f6. If we can trade this bishop for this knight, we will be able to attack f6 many times, and it will be very difficult. It will be very difficult for black to defend it. So here, bishop to b5 was played. Queen to g7, bishop takes d7 check, king takes d7, and now rook 1 to f3. Actually, protecting the g3 pawn just to be sure that there is no rook sacrifice there with eventually a perpetual check. So here black played king to e7. Now knight to f1. There we go, the rerouting of the knight. The knight is going from f1 to e3 and from e3 to f5. That's the idea. Now rook f4. The rook cannot be taken, of course, because of this pin, but it can be taken by the white rook, of course. But that's not what you want to do here with white, because if we would take this rook, rook takes rook, then this bishop would become alive by retaking with the pawn. So that's not what we're going to do. So here white played knight to e3. Now black took on f3, and white retook with the rook to free the square f5 for the knight. So we're getting closer to a classical bishop versus knight endgame, where the bishop is a bad bishop and the knight is going to be very strong on f5. Now let's continue. King to d8. The idea of this move is to make space on e7 for the bishop, so you can play bishop to e7 defending f6. Now queen to f2, putting more pressure on f6 and preparing that if we go later with the knight to f5, the queen will be attacking a7. So bishop e7 now, knight to f5, attacking the queen. Queen goes to g5, and here the queen from f2 takes the pawn on a7, like that. Now rook to e8 was played, and here white decided actually for the most simple way to win this position. Of course he could have taken on b7. That's a way to play this, and perhaps if you look at this position with an engine, it tells you that queen takes b7 is the best move. But remember that when we are playing in a tournament game, we need to find the most secure way to win, the most simple chess, and that's what Reggie did here. He played queen to e3, preventing any queen to c1 check, because that's the other option, to take on b7 and then queen to c1 check. If rook to f1, then queen takes c3, and things become just a little unclear. It's still better for white, but why take these risks if we can win in a very easy way by playing queen to e3. Here bishop to f8 was played, and now white started advancing with his pawn majority on the queen side. King to d7, a5, rook to a8. That's the reason why king to d7 was played, to allow the rook to go to the a file and stop this pawn from advancing. And at this moment white saw that trading queens would lead to a one endgame, and that's something that, well, grandmasters are really very good at this, evaluating a position to simplify towards an endgame. Here queen takes g5 was played, f takes g5, and now beautiful move g4, fixing the pawns on the king side on the light squares. So that's how we make this bishop look very bad. The bishop can never attack these white pawns on the light squares. Now c6 was played by black, d takes c6 check, b takes c6, and we have a pawn majority of 3 against 1 on the queen side. Rook d3 check, king e6, rook to d1, and now black tries c5. Looks like a very strong move, c5, but there is a surprise here. Perhaps you would like to have a look. Pause the video and think for about 5 minutes. See what would you do here? What's the easiest way to win this? Okay, I'll show you what happened in the game here. Is the beautiful move b5, sacrificing the pawn on a5, but this pawn, this b pawn, is going to advance. In the game black played c4 here, but let's have a look what happens if we take this pawn. So rook takes a5, then rook to d8, attacking the bishop, because the rook is not longer defending this bishop. The bishop has almost no square to go. The only square he can go without being taken is e7. So bishop to e7, now rook to e8, pinning the bishop. Now it must be defended once more, so rook a7 is forced, and here then white can simply advance his own pawn to b6. If black plays rook to b7, then we simply trade everything on e7. Rook takes e7 check, rook takes, knight takes, king takes, and then b7 and b8, queening, promoting. So that means that here taking this pawn on a5 would lead to a forced loss of the game. So here c4 was tried by black, but that's also not sufficient. a6 was the next move. Now f6, rook to d5, bishop a3, king to g2, there is no hurry, rook a7, and now the final stage starts, knight to e3, attacking this pawn on c4, and there is not really a very good way to play now for black. It's useless to try to defend this pawn, because then the white pawns are going to advance immediately. Bishop to b2 was played now. b6, sacrificing the a pawn, rook takes a6, now rook to b5. The bishop on b2 is under attack. It went to a3, and then knight takes. c4 was the last move of the game. How to stop this b pawn? It looks impossible. If we are rook to a8 to place the rook on b8, then we simply take here first, and after retaking b7, and white wins. So this is how white won this beautiful position. Let's have a short recap about the most important moments. We started in this position here, where d5 closes the center, and then we see with b4 preventing the bishop from having any possibility to get more freedom, and then going with this knight to this beautiful outpost. This is really an example of all these strategic concepts together. Bishop takes, rook takes, and then the next stage is to trade this bishop for the most important defender, and then going with the knight to this outpost on f5. There we are, and now capturing on a7, and here an important moment again, blocking the black queen from entering. Very simple chess, and then advancing the pawn majority, trading queens, placing the pawns on the light squares, and here a majority of 3 against 1 on the queen side is winning for white after these moves. So here is when black resigned. Just one more thing before we end the video. I'm starting another YouTube channel, and it's a channel with chess videos in Spanish. Because I realize sometimes I get these messages from people from Latin America or from Spain, and some of them don't speak very good English, or not enough to understand everything. So I've decided to make a second YouTube channel with middle game training in Spanish. So if you have any friends, Spanish speaking friends, or chess club mates that speak Spanish, or friends on the internet who like chess and speak Spanish or anything, or perhaps you would like to practice your Spanish, then go to this other YouTube channel that I have. I'm going to place a web link, so you can click on that, and if you're interested, and have a look there. Alright, last thing to say is click on thumbs up if you like this video. Alright, it's a great help for me. Alright, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.